Basim Magdy is one of the art world's rising stars. We've come to interview him at his first solo show in London at the Cecilia Brunson Projects space. Basim, thank you so much for agreeing to be interviewed by Studio International.
Thanks to you.
We really appreciate it. I wonder, to begin with, please could you tell me how you started your career as an artist?
Well, like a lot of artists, I went to art school, assuming that this is the right way to become an artist, and I didn't feel like I learned much at art school, so I started educating myself. The process started in the beginning by trying to do as many international artist workshops and residencies as I could. It gave me a good introduction to what's happening internationally. I met a lot of artists and young artists and curators because I was also young, and it started some collaborations. One thing led to another, but as I continued to work as an artist, I became interested in many other mediums and materials. I studied painting, so I after a while became interested in installation, which forced me to work with sound and more complex materials and to look at different things that I had not worked with before. And then eventually at some point I started working with film, and I didn't know anything about film. Mm-hmm. So I started by watching YouTube tutorial videos, and that's actually what I do with almost every new medium I work with. I start by watching how other people do it, and I take it in my own direction. I always have a certain result in mind, a certain effect or a certain image or a certain final piece, and I experiment a lot, and I try to figure out how I can use this material to get to that. Mm-hmm. And so it's been mostly a self-learning process, and it's a lot of fun because it involves a lot of exploration, and it's enjoyable.
Now I'd like to focus on the experimental film that gives its title to the show, The Many Colours of the Sky Radiate Forgetfulness. I wonder if you could tell me a little bit about this and how you play with the theme of colour in your work.
Well, it started as a commission by the Cultural Office of the City of Karlsruhe in Germany, mm-hmm. To respond to the fact that it's been 100 years since World War I. I was commissioned to do a public art piece, and I just wanted to do something that's not necessarily about this, but speaks about a lot of similar situations, mm-hmm. and I didn't want it to be limited to this particular place or particular event, or that it wouldn't be understood by just one group of people. I wanted it to touch upon very general human emotions that we all feel, mm-hmm. Emotions that are related to loss, to fading of memories, to collective understanding of history. And I went there and I shot a lot of footage, and I got to the point where I started writing a script, because I work in reverse in yes. comparison to a lot of other artists. I usually start with the footage, and then I write the script and I record the sound, and everything comes together, and during the process things change and evolve. Mm-hmm. But when I started writing the script, I started writing something that's more fragmented, and it's not a story. It's just a group of kind of my understanding of all these things that I just mentioned. Yes. And it became more abstract, but it was kind of flowing well, and I started playing with the footage that I had shot. Some of it was shot with different filters. There was a lot of effects, some pickled film. I also worked with a couple of friends who have been developing this process to convert video footage to 16 millimeter film, but that's not printed on 16 millimeter film. Instead, they developed this machine that and software that converts the frames to strips of 16 millimeter film that are then printed on overhead projector transparencies and then cut and perforated like 60 millimeter film, fed through the projector and projected like that. Mm-hmm. And then you get the effect of the normal house printer that it was printed on. I use that as an effect because it adds a lot of, the image is kind of vague and blurred, and it made sense with what I was trying to discuss with the film.
Indeed.
The color is something that I've always been interested in. I've always liked bright colors, and it kind of grew with me, and I didn't feel a need to not use bright colors. Mm-hmm. I think they're a good way to attract people's attention, and they're also a good tool for me to work with. I enjoy them, and I it's a good reason for me. It's a good enough reason for me to work with bright colors because I enjoy them.
Absolutely, yes. Could you tell me a bit more about how you have used colour and film to capture the idea of collective memory?
Well, with I don't know if color is directly related to that. It's just one of the tools that I as an artist like to use, and it's just what I do. Mm-hmm. Film is film again. I think of it as a tool that I can. What I really like about it is that I can change it and I can manipulate it in different ways. Mm-hmm. And it has a lot of potential because there is still a lot of things that I haven't done, and there's still a lot of things that I don't know that I will do because I haven't explored them yet.
Indeed, yes.
So I think of it. I don't know if it's directly related to this particular context of collective memory, mm-hmm. but I just utilize it to work with this because I'm interested in working with film, and I want to make a film that deals with collective memory. So I find the right way to connect both of them. Yeah. But also in my other work in the show, investigating the color spectrum of a post-apocalyptic future landscape, it was shot on slides that were pickled. Yeah. And the idea is to create a record, which is something of the past, but the record is of a future apocalypse, which means that whoever is looking at this is in the following future, the future that happened after the future apocalypse. It's mm-hmm. like two futures from now and going back. Mm-hmm. And it seemed fitting to manipulate the images in this way, manually using those chemicals to create those slides that are, each one of them is different. They show very arid apocalyptic landscapes, but at the same time, they look like they're otherworldly, coming from other time, from another place. Mm-hmm. And somehow look like they've been heavily affected by this hypothetical future apocalypse. So again, it's a tool. It's a way to communicate ideas, and I try to find the best way to use it mm-hmm. to communicate those ideas.
Mm-hmm. And you have mentioned the fact your films use images and sounds and narratives that creates this multi-layered effect, which is rather wonderful. Could you tell me a little bit about how you use sound in the title film, The Many Colours of the Sky Radiate Forgetfulness, please?
The sound is usually I make a lot of recordings. Mm-hmm. I have a sound recording with me almost wherever I go, and mm-hmm. if I hear something interesting, I record it. Mm-hmm. And they can be very abstract sounds. They're not not something that you would recognize. Mm-hmm. For example, and sometimes they can be very misleading sounds. So for example, there's a part where there's what sounds like wood burning, mm-hmm. But it's actually very tiny, so bubbles bursting. Mm-hmm. So, but then the way the sound works with the rest of the elements in the film is that It's exactly like the relationship between the image and the text or the script. They don't describe one another. They don't relate to one another literally, and the sound functions the same way. It's not the sound of what is happening in the image. It's the sound that I think is relevant to that image. And the relationship, of course, between them, they move closer to each other sometimes and further away from each other sometimes, and sometimes when they move, too much away from each other, it's time for them to meet again, and then you have a moment where the sound makes sense with the image, and then a moment when it doesn't make as much sense. But I think it's also part of I think of it as a container, and all these elements are in it, and if you have the right combination of everything, you could have an ambiguous film, but that is also articulate in what it's trying to say.
Indeed, yes. Why did you find the sound of soap bubbles relevant to the piece?
It just made sense. It's not mathematics. I don't think of things, in terms of a formula in my head. Sometimes things seem right, and I just go with it, and then they turn out to be okay this way.
Now, I understand that the film is going to be screened at the Rotterdam Film Festival this year, and I wonder, when people see the film, what do you hope they might read into the film?
I hope they will feel something, because it's to me it's a very emotional film. It speaks to people's emotions, and they're very human emotions that anyone from any kind of cultural background can relate to. And I hope that they will feel something. It's going to make them relate to a memory or an experience, or instigate some sort of emotion. And that would be an ideal reaction for me. I'd be happy with that.
And lastly, I would like to talk about the pair of photographs that you've alluded to, which are entitled A World Within a World Within a World Within a Green Coral Wall, and similarly...
Within a green orange wall.
That's right.
Well, very descriptive.
Yes. And in those photographs, you bring the natural world into closer view.
Yeah.
Could you tell me a bit about how you enjoy working with the natural environment in these photographs, please?
Well, not just in these photographs, in all of my work. I really film what's around me, and I don't construct settings to, things to film. I film what's already there. It's just I try to find something interesting in what's already there, and look at it in a way that's interesting to me, and try to create a different way to look at it and a different interpretation of it. But I always start from what's already there.
Yes.
And the natural world is already there. It's all around me. I just find things that I think could say something, and I photograph them. In this case, it's there are two photographs of walls built out of corals as bricks, which were shot in the old fishermen's settlement in Sharjah, the original settlement that became the Emirate of Sharjah afterwards in the United Arab Emirates. And when that was built, there was a lot of corals on the beach, so they used the corals as bricks. And it was something fascinating for me. And they also, obviously it has a functional reason, because it's really hot there and they keep the air cool. But it really felt like it was a very complex world that I wanted to somehow document. And with the film pickling, that added an incredible effect that changed the color, that became completely green. It became completely like otherworldly. Yes. And when I looked at the negatives, I thought I really have to print these two, and it made sense, and I just did it.
Great. Yes, they're rather wonderful and poetic, those photographs, I think. And I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about your hopes and dreams for the future.
That's a tough question. I just hope that, it's still going to be enjoyable, the process, and that I will always have fun, because for me it's really about enjoying what I do. And if I stop enjoying what I do, and obviously it's not all, like, there's parts of it that I don't enjoy as much as other parts, but the process of making work, making art, I hope it's still going to be enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.